Welcome, Ryan, to my YouTube channel. Dr. Ryan Lee, I have been wanting to get you on my YouTube channel for a while now, and I'm so grateful that you finally are able to schedule a video chat with me. So, without further ado, Dr. Ryan Lee is a therapist who specializes in helping ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'm so curious about hearing your story about how the Jehovah's Witnesses came into your life. And if you want to go ahead and start.
I'll just dive right in. Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
So it's a long story. I'll see. I'll try to hit the major points. So, before I was born, my mom got pregnant with me when she was 18. And she was living in the city on her own, and she just moved there, didn't have a lot of friends, didn't have a lot of money, just had a new baby. And the Jehovah's Witnesses showed up at her door offering a lot of love bombing and support and an instant community and a purpose, and well, let's bring you over lasagna, we'll help you babysit the kid. And yeah, so that was sort of the start of that. And what was kind of interesting, I don't know if my mom will ever watch this, but my sense of it is that she got in, and I don't think she, but my grandfather, who she was very at odds with, was very vehement about opposing her in this choice. And I think that played a role in her going, well, I'm not leaving, Anyways, I digress. Yeah, so I was born into it. I was I was just a perfect little JW soldier. I was 6 years old. I was doing presentations at the door. 7 years old, I had my first talk on stage. I was, good at reading and writing at an early age, so they capitalized on that. And yeah, I was very much, I was a kid at school that would ask people politely not to swear on me, and try to find ways to introduce the Jehovah's Witnesses and with it. And when I look back, to say I believed it, I don't know if I believed it. I just accepted it as this is what I've been told is the truth. And yeah, it was like same as somebody saying you're a male, you're a boy. It's just a fact of life. That's your boy. Your name is Ryan. You're Jehovah's Witnesses. These are all things that are not changeable. And it stayed that way for quite a bit until I got into high school, and high school was the first time I started making friends in school. Before that, I was very closed down. And my entry point to that was that they were offering a drama class that happened during school. So technically, it was okay. So of course, we don't do any after school activities. There's no thing. And I was able to join this class. I'd always wanted to do acting, and I had this spot about twice a week for about an hour and a half, and the teacher was a little loose, where I was just hanging out and having fun and being goofy and making friends, and people liked me. And I had a kind of quirky ADD, spastic kind of energy that all of a sudden was welcomed and appreciated. And so that was the start of things. And it spread a little bit. So it was during school, but then we were doing a play that required a couple of after school practices. So my mom's like, well, okay, that's fine. And I had to do performances, And then when I was a senior, I had an opportunity to audition for the senior play. which of course it was all after school. And I really wanted to do it. And I was shocked that my mom said, you know what, go for it. She was supportive. I know there was this part of her that really loved the joy it brought out of me doing this acting. So now, 3 to 5 times a week, I'm getting a lot of extra worldly time. And yeah,
I'm gonna.
deepen those friendships.
I have a question for you. You never mentioned anything about your father. Was he in the picture at all?
No, my father left when I was around 1 years old. So I didn't have a relationship with him.
Okay.
And then I had a couple of stepfathers along the way.
Mm.
That's maybe that's a whole other story, but yeah. Not really a lot of strong male role models in my life as a young age. So I had to figure out a lot for myself. Um,
Thank you.
yeah. So, sorry.
No, I said thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so yeah, basically that went through high school, and then prom was coming up, and there's a lot more to this story, but I'll give you the short version, which is I wanted to go to prom. And at that point, I was still resigned to the idea that I'm still a Jehovah's Witness and nothing I can do about that. But I was really enjoying this life that I was having. And I wanted to have that. I want to go to that event. I wanted to be able to say goodbye and like have one last. And I went to the elders and I said, I really want to go. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to do anything I'm not supposed to do, but I really want to go to this event. And they said no, flat out. And so I just said, well, fuck this. And it was just the tipping point. It was the straw that broke the camel's back, and I just went for it. My mom at the time, in my senior year, had spent some time in a psychiatric institution. I think it was a few months, but that also was like when the cat's away, the mice will play type situation. So I had maybe my first kiss, I think, around that time, and doing a lot of other stuff that I wasn't supposed to do. I had this mentality. I think it's not uncommon. The witnesses always tell you that like it all sins can be forgiven, but the worst sins are the ones that you commit consciously, knowingly, that you're not supposed to do it. So I had this mentality where I just didn't think or reflect on anything I was doing. I was like in this go mode where I just started doing things and going places and doing stuff I shouldn't do, but I didn't think about it because I had that thing in my head that like, well, I can reflect on this later, and if I do, I can always be forgiven. Anyways, so yeah, so that started that. And yeah, my mom was in a psychiatric unit for a while, and she got out, and I broke the news to her, and I was really bracing myself. And I had framed it at the time like, I don't really know about the religion. I need to take some time. I need to make sure I'm deciding for myself, that kind of thing. And inside, I already knew. I'm like, I don't think I'm doing this anymore. But I tried to put it to her gently,
I
and
have a question.
surprisingly, she's like, yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering, so who took care of you when when your mom was in the psychiatric ward? You were what, 17? Or were
Yeah.
you 18?
Um, no, I was 17, and I was taking care of myself. I had a car.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, my stepfather at the time,
Mm,
we had reached a point where we're like, we coexist together, but that's about it.
okay. Okay.
So I'm just gonna do my own thing. You do your thing,
Mm.
and let's just stay apart. Um, but yeah, so to my surprise, when I broke the news to my mom, she's like, I think I'm going to take a break too. you know. Um, and here's the thing: she never really, her personality never really belonged in the witnesses. She's very, she has like a feminist, independent spirit. She is not the meek wife of the household. She is, she's got strong energy. So I think she'd had enough. The marriage with my stepfather's not going well. Um, yeah, and so we both left at the same time, which is very lucky. Like a lot of the people I work with don't have that, and that's one of the hardest things is leaving the organization when you don't have the support of those closest to you. Uh, and so uh, yeah, so that began my period of doing all the things. I refer to that phase as crossing off commandments. I kind of just had this sense of like, all right, everything that I am has been infused into me by this organization, and I need to decide for myself, you know. So for a period of time, I was like shoplifting. I used to go into Newbury Comics, which is a CD store back in the day. Ugh, it makes me sound so old. And you know, I would just shove CDs into my big baggy jeans. Um, I would lie. I did a stint where I would just lie because it, you know, we'll just try this on. This seems to make life easier. Having premarital sex, you know, all these things. But then, yeah, you know, as I went, and that was maybe a period of like a year or so, where I hit a point where I'm like, you know what, I don't really like the way I feel about myself, you know, with lying. Um, it doesn't feel good to steal things. I like the idea of working hard for my money and paying other people for their work. So obviously they modified those things. Then things like premarital sex was, yeah, I'm fine with that. That's great. You know, and yeah, that continued for a few years. And so I had this momentum, and a lot of people experience this, especially at that age, where there's this excitement of the new world, you know, everything's new. And ended up getting into college and going that path. Um, and that was fun, but it caught up with me. Not really the behavior so much as the unresolved issues with the witnesses. You know, there is for a lot of people, maybe most people, it's this existential. What am I do? What am I? What is this? What am I doing here? What is my purpose? How am I supposed to be? I've been in this mindset that Armageddon is going to come any second. And now it seems like I'll be around for another 60 years or whatever. Um, and I kept running away from it. You know, it's weird. I did some stuff. I did a lot of research in that time about religions and exploring other religions and that kind of thing. But in a different way, I was kind of just running from the experience, trying to put it behind me. And then about 10 years later, I'm 28, I got into a pretty serious depression, and everything just collapsed. You know, I just was at one of my lowest points. And that was when I said, okay, I need help. What is the thing that people do in this circumstance? I guess therapy is a thing. Um, I was initially very reluctant about going to therapy because I just thought like it's just talking. What is this going to do? You know, like there's plenty of people I can talk to. Like, and luckily I had a therapist at the time. He was great. And he, you know, I was kind of grilling him, you know, like why are you asking me that? And what is this supposed to accomplish? And how is this supposed to work? And how am I going to feel better? And he's like, listen, he's like, I'll do my best to answer all these questions. But the process works in a way that is subtle and nuanced, you know. It's layered and complicated, and it's not always a straight line. But he's like, what I can tell you is I see that it works. People get value out of this. So what I would ask of you, if you can trust me, is give it 6 months. Give it 6 months, and if it's not working for you, by all means, just keep going. So I did, and sure enough, maybe it was probably 2 or 3 months later, I was like, wow, I'm actually starting to feel like myself again, you know. And so yeah, so that was the start of my career in psychology. You know, I was like, wow, this really helps. And then I was like, I was like, oh, this is what therapy is. This is what I do all the time. Like, I was just naturally somebody, anyways, who was interested in people's challenges and like being supportive and connecting. Like, you can make a living off that. Um, and So yeah, from that point, I went back to school, worked through to get my doctorate. That whole 4 or 5 years was a blur. That program is just keeps you going 7 days a week, around the clock. But I learned so much about ways of approaching therapy and how to support people and different tools I can use. Um, yeah, and then after that, I went out into the world, did some traveling, drove to California without any particular goal in mind other than to move towards sunny weather, and worked for a few years as a head of I was a director of a coaching program that was like an online mobile therapy app. Um, and again, this is not so Jehovah's Witness related, but I did find myself in another bit of a depression because I'd done all this work. I'd done all this work. I got this job, high paying. I was living in San Diego. I was on the beach. I could see the beach from my house. I had all the things that I could want, but I was working 60 hours a week to keep it. And I was like, why am I not? What's going on? Um, so luckily, a friend of mine introduced me to the idea of working with ayahuasca down in Peru. And I took a trip with him, had my first ayahuasca experience, which is very intense. But, in short, it's kind of a medicine that digs up all the stuff that you've been storing away. And whether you like it or not, it's coming up and it's coming out. Um,
Yes, we just talked about this. I want to like interrupt for a second because I just got back from my fourth ayahuasca retreat. 6 days. No, actually, it was 2 weeks ago because I went to visit my family after that, and we had a little talk, you and I, before this because Ryan lives in the same area that I went to my last retreat, which is really, really cool. And I've sat with ayahuasca now, total of 14 times. So I know exactly what you mean in the course of 10 years. And yeah, I think like there's so much around ayahuasca and plant medicine in general, and for people that are coming out of the Jehovah's Witnesses or just curious about it, I think it's important to bring attention to it and talk more about that and what drew you into it. So go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt again, but just thought I wanted to chime in.
yeah, no, I'm happy to share. I definitely want to start by saying it's not a cure-all. Nothing's a
Mhm.
cure-all. Um, it's not for everybody. It's not something I would say you should do. I would say if you're called and interested, by all means explore and feel it out. It might be for you. It is a very intense experience. You drink this South American brew, tastes awful, and it's always hard to describe because you know on the surface there's a lot of like, why would you do that? Meaning, it involves a lot of discomfort, usually, not always. But there's usually vomiting involved or diarrhea. Um,
Or both.
Sometimes it is with that
I said or both.
or both. Yeah, the double decker we call it. Um, yeah, and it brings up things you don't want to think about. But here's the beauty of it is it brings up these things for a good reason. It puts you through this intense experience for a good reason. And that reason can be very different from person to person. But I've worked, I was telling you earlier, I worked as a integration therapist. So I'd work on these retreats and I've seen and sat probably hundreds of people anyways. And I would say, regardless of what someone experiences during, I would say easily 95% of the time, people are walking away with something important. Now, sometimes it might just mean they're experiencing deep emotional stuff that they haven't felt, and they cry and they move and they get it out. And sometimes that's it. Sometimes it's just this is something that needed to be felt, so you don't have to carry it around with you all the time. Sometimes it's showing you things where it's like, look at what's going on in your life, look at what you're doing, and look at the ways when that's contributing to toxicity in your system. You know, it's not uncommon people quit smoking after working with ayahuasca, or quit some kind of drug. Um, yeah, and it's, I'm always hesitant to say too much about it because it is so personal, um, what happens. But what I can say is that yes, overall, what I see in most people is growth, um, emotional growth. And if you're feeling really stuck, if you're feeling like you've tried everything else, if you're feeling disconnected from yourself, if you're feeling numb, it might be something worth exploring. So yeah, so I had my first ceremony, blew the doors off,
How
went
long ago
back
was
about
that?
4 or 5 months. Oh, I said I
How
had my
lo-
first ceremony.
how
Oh,
long
how
ago
long
was
ago?
that?
About 7 years. Yeah. And had my first ceremony, and then went back 4 or 5 months later, had this in the second ceremony. I was like, I need to live here. That's, I had this big powerful awakening. I had this job. I told you I was working 60 hours. I went back and I said I was ready to lose the job if I needed to, but I was like, hey, so here's the thing. I want to work half as much as I've been working. I would like to retain my salary this proportionally, and I only want to do the parts of this job that I like, and I don't want to do the parts that I don't like. And I was expecting them to be like, "Get out of here," you know. And they were like, "Oh, okay. Oh, I guess we can make that work." So that launched me. Went to Peru, started working with the medicine, started supporting other people working with the medicine, and yeah, after a few years, I ended up parting ways with that other job, and that was around the time. This is around 5 years ago, that I started focusing my energy on creating a practice around helping former JWs and other cult survivors. Like I work with Mormons, Scientology, and some offshoots of Christianity, fundamentalist type organizations. And yeah, and since then I've been putting that's been the main my main focus.
What an absolutely amazing story. And where's your mom in this whole picture?
My mom is still living in New Hampshire, and it took her a little while to sort of embrace um, the idea that Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult, let's say. Um, for a while, maybe, I don't know, 3 to 5 years, she still kind of held on to, well, I still think they're the truth, but um, her biggest thing was, you know, if I'm not going to be in paradise, then she didn't want to be there either. Um,
Mm,
you know, and that's fine. That's we all have different journeys out of the organization, and
mhm,
sometimes that's how it goes. Where it's like, I'm not ready to come to terms with saying they're a cult because that brings up all sorts of feelings. So, but I know I need to leave. So that's first step, and I'm gonna let that be okay. And that was what worked for her.
mm,
It was a little frustrating at first because, you know, I'm
yeah.
learning all these things and doing more research and wanting to share them, and, you know, wanting her to be where I was at. But that doesn't work. Everyone's got to do this at
Mhm,
their own pace.
mhm. And what were her thoughts about you doing ayahuasca and wanting to pursue that route? Because that's, I mean, I drank the medicine for the first time a year, like after I fully left, and I was still like, should I be here? Should I not be here? I was in the middle of the jungle in Peru with a shaman in a maloca and with the Icaros going on. I was, there was still a part of me that was still under like the influence of the Jehovah's Witnesses, thinking like this could be demonic, this can be demonic. Like still, so my first two ayahuasca journey ceremonies in the middle of the jungle in Peru, I felt absolutely nothing. And another thing. People think that they're gonna drink the medicine, they're gonna feel the feelings, or they're gonna vomit and all this other stuff. Yeah, my first two times I felt absolutely nothing. I was just in this
Yeah.
space of just feeling anything. So going back to my question, sorry, I went off a little bit. What was your mom's thoughts about you going down this route of drinking medicine and sitting with people and being an integration coach or therapist?
Yeah. She was supportive.
Mm,
Um, I think she had some hesitation, as I did myself, because when I was in my early 20s, I had a stint where I did a lot of psychedelics and was not doing it responsibly. They were, no regard for set and setting, and had some pretty rough experiences that I believe were largely in part to me. Again,
mhm,
these medicines are beautiful, whether it be LSD, mushrooms, um, but they require a certain amount of presence. They require you to create a setting where you're safe, where you're supported with other people they bring stuff up that needs space to be brought up. So doing these things at a concert or something like that, it's fine if that works for you, it's no problem. But if you're looking to do some work, or you think there's some stuff that might come up, it's not the type of situation you want to be in. So anyways, I had some rough experiences. So when I returned back to this psychedelic medicine years later, there was a little hesitation on my part and a little concern on my mom's part. But no, she supported it. And yeah, my family, my grandmother's so funny. She belly laughs every time I tell her about it. She's like, "You pay somebody money to go throw up?" you know? And I'm like, "Well, it's a little more than that, Graham, but um, it's been great." Yeah, no, and basically I think the biggest thing is that they could see that the impact it was having on me. I went from having a real heavy energy to all of a sudden being excited about life and being more connected and having my heart more open. And you can't argue with that, when you feel that from somebody, that something shifted in this positive way. It's like, well, however you got there, working.
Well, it's awesome that you have that support from both your mom and your grandmother. Is there anything that you wanted to add in this interview? And I also want to say, before you say anything of that sort, I know we had talked about doing another interview where we're going to answer some questions that I'm sure a lot of people have. So we're going to save that for the next video. So if I can ask you right now, is there anything you'd like to add as we're concluding this interview that you feel like you haven't said yet?
No, no, I don't think
Okay.
so. Other than to anyone listening, I mean, I just like at this point, I've worked with hundreds of witnesses, former witnesses, and if you're listening, I hope you are absorbing all the material that's out there available for you. I hope you know that you're not alone. I hope you know that even whatever you're going through, which may be really gnarly and may be a while before you feel better, just really know that there's so many ways out. There's so many ways through, and the fact that you left, as much as it can bring up so much hurt. I've never encountered somebody. I've encountered some clients who have been through some really rough times that lasted sometimes a long time. But I'll always ask them every once in a while. I'll say, "You could go back. Do you want to go back?" And immediately they're like, "Nope, no, no, no." So you may be trading in, you know, a lot of things, but what you're getting in return is the spectrum of life and emotion and feeling, and that comes with the bad feelings too. But there's something you can do about it. So I hope everyone out there listening is actively helping themselves by seeking support.
Definitely. And a lot of people get stuck in what I call like a gray zone. There's like a little bridge you have to cross over. And then on the other side, it's like, it's really, really good. But there's a lot of people that are just stuck in this like complaining and like going back and forth and just like a lot of negativity. And that's where they say, and you can come over it and let go of the victim mentality. And that is my past, but it doesn't define me. or you can just continue on this victim mentality and my life is so terrible, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, so thank you so much
Yeah.
for that.
If I just comment on that real quick, what you just said, um, that is one of the things I hear a lot, because you go online, you go on Reddit, you go on things, you're going to encounter people that are really angry, seem really bitter. And I am sure, in fact, there's a small percentage of people who get stuck there indefinitely. And usually because there's other stuff going on. Maybe it's trauma and abuse that they're experiencing, or whatever. There's reasons why some small percentage get stuck there. Most of us, what I would really want people to know is don't be afraid to be angry. Don't be afraid to feel a little bitter or to feel sad or resentful. Recognize it for what it is. Recognize it as a place that we don't want to live and set up camp there and create a whole identity around. But by all means, like, please, you know what? If you're feeling angry and those angry people speak to you, that's what you need right now. You need to feel angry. You have good reason to feel angry. Find ways to move and feel that emotion. Again, as long as you're keeping it in the perspective of this is something that needs to move, not a place I need to build a life around.
Absolutely. Anger is a very essential emotion. So that's really great that you're talking about feeling that emotion, because it's
Yeah.
really important that we feel that. We don't want to deny ourselves of an emotion like anger. So yeah.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much. We're gonna have a continuation of this and we're gonna answer some of the top questions and some of the things that you share with your Ex-Jehovah's Witness clients on our next video.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome.